Hello, and welcome to today's lesson on laurel birch. This is Creative Use Art Lesson Crates, and my name is Karen, and I am your instructor for today. Laurel Birch was an artist who was born in 1945, and she passed away in 2007 from complications of a bone disease. Now, Laurel Birch had a really hard life in the beginning. She lived in not great homes and really had to work hard for everything that she owned, whether it be food or clothing. She would be a live-in babysitter just so she could have a roof over her head and food in her stomach. So she was poor for a very long time. Now, when she was in her teens and early 20s, she started making jewelry. And this jewelry got really popular with the friends that she had in New York. And then they started buying them, and then their friends started buying her jewelry, and it just kept spreading and spreading. Well, the cool thing is that one day a businessman from China got in touch with her and actually started an entire line of jewelry that was based on her artwork. And so she got really famous for that. Well, as most artists do, she kind of got a little bored with doing just the artwork on jewelry, so she started doing it on fabric and canvas and stuff like that. She is very famous for doing very whimsical characters, nothing realistic. It's typically mermaids and horses and birds and what we're going to do today, which are cats. So let's go ahead and get started. For this lesson, you're going to need to start with a pencil and a sheet of the thick paper. The reason we want to use thick paper is because we're going to be painting on it, and if it's thin paper and you put something wet on it, it's going to go through. It'll make a hole or it'll rip easily, so we don't want that to happen. So we're going to use a nice thick paper. Listen to this. That tells you that it's thick. It's nice, almost like a cardboard. And we're going to draw very softly with our pencil because ultimately we want to be able to erase our pencil lines. We're going to make a page full of laurel birch cats. We're going to start off with one front and center. This one is a very simple cat. Now don't draw too small. Basically, if you made a U with your hand, that's about the size that we want the head. So if you go any smaller than that, you're probably going to be a little too detailed. So if that were the case, and that were our basic shape or size that we want to do our head in, we're going to start with a W. Remember, draw super softly. That way, if you mess up, you can erase. And you can erase all your guidelines. And then once we do the actual color part of this, it'll also be easier for you to erase the extra lines. Now we're going to do a bottom lip. And we're going to do a triangle nose. That's very simple, right? We now want to go straight up on both sides of the triangle, about the width of a finger, and we're going to do a straight line out to the edge on both sides. This is not a realistic cat. Remember, do not try and make this look like a real life cat. It's more along the lines of a quilted cat. So we're going to do a frown and a frown. Notice I met corner to corner, corner to corner. Now the eyes, we're going to do a parentheses or a C and a backwards C, and another C and a backwards C. Then we will do a circle in the center. We're going to go up a little higher on both sides, and that's going to be our ears. Go straight across. We're going to do, coming from the corner of the eye, come up and out, up and out. And inside the ear, we're going to just do a little bump, triangle, bump, triangle. Now every cat has whiskers, so we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Come to the side of the cheek. Give me a slightly puffed out line and bring it down to the bottom of your paper. This side, come just below where the eye is. Give me a more bumped out line and go to the edge. Now we want to start not quite the center of the body, a little bit over to the left. I want you to go up, swing it around, and down. Give me a little bump at the bottom. And now do the same line again. We just made the tail. That is quite simply the basic design of a laurel birch cat. Now, very often you will find that she has a lot of geometric designs on it. You can do triangles. You can polka dot, stripe, whatever you'd like. This is where you get to be the artist. You get to decide how you'd like it to look. What we're going to do is fill in our whole paper full of laurel birch cats. The exact same thing, just in a variety of areas throughout the paper, and sometimes flip them. What do I mean by that? Watch this. All right, we started with our W. Come up, upside down triangle, bottom lip, straight lines, straight out, frown, frown, parentheses, circle, parentheses. I know I'm going fast for this one. I just want to show you what I mean by switching sides. If you find that I'm going too fast for you, please feel free to pause the video and we can start it back up when you've caught up. So now the head is exactly the same. How would I do the opposite of this one? Well, I would do this line on this side and this line on this side. But stop right when you meet him, because if you go into him, then he's in front and you'll be able to see the other one in front, and it makes it look like he's see-through. So make sure that if it's behind the other one, you stop when you get to the other one. We'll do our tail, and there we go. So now I'm going to just keep filling. Over here I don't have enough room for a full head. I'm going to do a half of one. See that? So we're going to go ahead and pause and draw these cats all over your paper. When you finish drawing your cats, you then want to Sharpie them. Now I know Sharpie is the name of the permanent marker. You can use any brand you want. Just make sure it's a fine point you're going to come in here and trace everything. Alright, so fill your paper with more cats and then outline. And we'll be back in just a minute. Okay, so I have filled in my paper with lots of cats, and they look like they're behind each other because I don't overlap lines. Now, if you question how I did this, in another video next to this one, you will see a sped up version of me doing it in Sharpie so you can see it right off the bat. Alright, so now we want to go ahead and give these cats some character. Remember how we did some geometric shapes over here? We can do that on a few of these. I don't recommend being crazy with the designs, but you can definitely add some fun stuff to them. It does not have to be realistic. Flowers, polka dots, stars. Stripes. Now up in these areas here that are empty, we're going to pretend those are cats. So let's put some geometric shapes in it so it looks like there's something back there, even though there's really nothing drawn. Alright, so I really like the way this is looking, so it's time now to fill it in. So we're going to need a water source of some sort, a mug or a bucket, a napkin, and your paints. If you're wearing something good, I do recommend that you put on an apron or change your shirt, just in case, because even though I try to send washable paints, there's no guarantee. So, and if it's acrylic that's been sent to you, there is no getting that out. But this lesson is not acrylic, this is a watercolor lesson. So go ahead and get your watercolor palette out and we'll get started. Alright, so I have a rag, bucket with water, and my brush, and I also have my paints. When you use your paints, it's important to remember there are two different ways you can use them. You can either wet the palette with your brush and use the wet cakes, or you can wet your paper first in whatever area you want it colored with the water, then wet your brush, touch your watercolor, and let it bleed. So it's up to you, whichever one feels more comfortable. If you do it this way, you will get a more pastel look. But the really cool thing is you can very easily blend colors when they're like this because it's still a wet surface. Oh, I didn't grab enough. I'm trying to grab my yellow. It doesn't want to come in. So now I've got a little bit of orange going on over here. I'm going to finish this guy with the wet, but I think I'm going to just do the wet cakes. Let me get my palette over here. Do the wet cakes because they tend to work a little better that way. With watercolors, if they're not blending well or if they're not spreading well, you can add more water. And if you want a darker area, you can very easily do layers of watercolor and that will give you a darker area of color. So you can add shading without really trying too hard. All right. You also want to remember that if you had two puddles on the sidewalk and you let them touch, you're basically going to have one puddle, because wet touching wet ends up bleeding together. The same thing happens with watercolors. So if you don't want your red mixing with your blue, then paint in sections. Spread it out. That way the colors have a chance to dry before you do the area next to it. So let's say I don't want this nose to spread in with the blue. I would wait for my blue to dry, and then I could paint my nose. Alright. So I think you have a pretty good understanding of how to fill this. I'm sure you don't need to sit and watch me paint slowly this whole time. But I will do a sped up version of me filling him in, or this painting in. That way you can see my take on it. There's not really a wrong way to fill it in. It's just color. My little kids, in fact, will do a technique, and you may want to try this one day. It's where you take a marker. Let me grab a marker so I can show you. When you do this, you have to make sure that it is a water-based marker, but if you take Crayola markers, and it could be any brand, but just because I have it, put some marker down. Not a lot. Take your wet brush and paint it. See, markers, when they're water-based, are technically watercolors. If you ever find that you've left your markers open and they've dried out, let them soak in water and you will make homemade watercolors. And the only reason we're not doing this marker trick for this project is because, as you can see, it's very dense. It is dark, so it might not be the look you're going for. I'm going to go ahead and sign off, but I'm going to have a video next to this that is me painting this, like I said, in a nice sped up way so you can see it completed. But I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Laurel Burch is a really inspiring artist. It's a shame that she left so soon, but I love her whimsical drawings, her artwork, her jewelry. Her stuff is still popular to this day. So thank you so much for joining me for this lesson, and we will see you the next time.